couple seconds here. And it looks like we're already recording. Great. Thank you, Carla. So welcome to our July web chat with MN ABE. With our state staff today, my name is Brad Haskamp. I'm our Secondary Credential and Education Policy Specialist.
I'm Julie Dinkle, the Transition Specialist.
And I'm Jody Versa, the Program Quality Specialist.
And everybody else on the team is either they're in other meetings right now, or on vacation, or doing additional other work. So you get the three newbies on the staff for the MN ABE web chat today. Well, we have plenty of stuff to talk with you about and lots of slides to share with you. So just to remind you, these are meant to be pretty conversational. So I just wanted to remind you that there are three ways that you can kind of share input and ideas. First off, you can type using the webinar's chat function. You can chat any ideas that you might have. In addition, you can always raise your hand over the phone or on your with your headset, and we can ask questions during Q&A periods, and we'll unmute you then. And if you have any technical assistance, Carla Vien from Literacy Action Network can always help you with any tech issues that you're having. Some of our topics for today, we're going to have a couple of general announcements for folks. Then we're going to dive into Workhorse and ABE collaboration issues that are kind of pertinent right now. We also want to talk about transitions, accountability and data, high school equivalency testing, grants, and make sure we have time for any additional questions or topics that you might have from the audience there. So let's kick off with announcements. Jody, do you want to kick us off?
Yep, so a couple of announcements to get us started today. Just for you to know, one project that I've been working on is updating and reorganizing the MN ABE website, and we were originally really hopeful that it was going to be live for this event, but that didn't happen. But it will be live soon, and we'll send out a notice to y'all to let you know. But so just kind of a heads up that the website will be changing. Something that's important for you to keep in mind, if any of your websites or you have any links to that website, those links might change, so that's just something to be aware of. This is just a screenshot of what the reorganized site looks like. One of the things that isn't yet finished is we're considering possibly changing up kind of the format, the shell, the look of it. So actually it might look a little different in terms of the branding and the color scheme, but all of the content is there. So you can kind of see on the left is the menu of how content is organized on this site now. So I would be happy to have a few people, if anybody would be interested, I can send you kind of the link to the temporary site as it currently exists, and if you'd like to take a look at it and dig around and see if you see any typos or anything, and give me any feedback, I'd be happy for that. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me an email and I will tell you how to access it. Otherwise, be watching for an email, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, that is just an announcement that this new reorganized site is up and running. Okay, next announcement is I just want to let you know that another project that I'm working on, or just kind of diving into, is developing some program quality standards. So my job title is Program Quality Specialist. So this is one of kind of the projects that that's going to be a focus for me probably over the next few years. And I'm just kind of diving into it, just getting started, just starting to talk about it with the field. And I wanted to, first of all, just kind of let you all know that the intention of this is not to add another set of content standards. I know we have the CCRS, we have ACES and TIF and North Star, and that feels like a lot to kind of get our heads around and requires a lot of PD. And I know we're all working really hard on that. So the intention is not to add more to that set of standards, but the idea with developing program quality standards is that we already have some accountability requirements based on, you know, state and federal statute that kind of regulate what we do. So those are pretty top down. The idea of defining program quality would be to kind of balance and round those out with some more bottom-up kind of descriptions and understanding of what quality ABE program looks like, you know, on the ground, in our buildings, in our classrooms. And eventually the idea is that these would be integrated into the 5-year narrative, so that your 5-year narrative would really be an explanation of how your program strives to meet program quality standards in addition to and along with, you know, meeting all of the accountability requirements. So as a very first stage in this, I'm looking to do a couple of focus groups this fall, probably September or October. I'm going to do them via webinar to make it easy for anybody across the state to participate. And that really the idea of this first stage is just to talk to you all who are doing the work in the field, just to have a discussion about what does high quality programming look like and how do we do that in our context in Minnesota with, you know, with the resources that we have. Nothing evaluative about this, just looking to, you know, gather information and start this conversation. So if you are interested, contact me. I will also be putting out a request for interested folks via email, so you can be watching for that.
Great.
I think that's all we've got for announcements.
Excellent. Thank you, Jody.
Yep.
Well, then I'm going to turn it over to Julie to talk about some of our workforce collaboration with ABE issues that are coming up.
All right, thanks, Brad. Just to provide an overview of when we moved from the Workforce Investment Act to the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, there are 3 main focuses or changes the federal government wanted to see with the American Job Centers. Now, American Job Center is a term for workforce centers. It's a new term that they're kind of pushing that we use. However, in Minnesota, the term workforce with a capital W and a capital F centers is a branded term in Minnesota. So you may find that your workforce centers do not necessarily move to the American Job Center verbiage, or not verbiage, but use that term. But anyways, the technological advances open to new methods of service delivery for integrated one-stop centers is really about a discussion that's going on nationally about having virtual workforce centers, getting rid of the bricks and mortar workforce centers and moving to these virtual workforce centers. The second bullet, new evidence-based models provide more opportunity for work-relevant education models, is around the work that's being done in career and technical education with apprenticeships, on-the-job training, earn and learn models. And these are all areas that adult basic education should be exploring as ways to offer some of our programming. And then the final change with American Job Centers, not really a change, but they just want to incent stronger partnership requirements that would improve our strategies for serving the clients and learners that we serve. So with that, they wanted to improve services to the clients. So there's an emphasis on skills and credentials, and that gives value to the work adult basic education is doing in regards to integrated education and training. And one of the other services is a focus on access and opportunities for those with barriers to employment. And this is where alignment with other partners is critical in providing comprehensive support to adult learners who may need them. And then the other services are around businesses and employers and having easily identifier to hire skilled workers. And that's a little bit more on our Wagner-Pizer partners, but it's important to know that that's one of the goals that they have been tasked with. They also are emphasizing rigorous evaluation, and they're using data from integrated data systems to inform the decision-making process. So it's important to keep in mind that each partner of an American Job Center must provide access to its programs or activities. And there's another slide that describes access. They must use a portion of their funds to support infrastructure and to provide career services. They need to enter into an MOU with the local workforce development board, participate in the operation of a one-stop delivery system, and then provide representation on a state and local board. Now, we're pretty good in Minnesota with the last three bulleted areas. We've been doing that work under WIA, and we will continue to do that work under WIOA. The two new areas are the first two bullets around access and using a portion of our funds to support infrastructure and providing career services. So let's look at that a little closer. Access has three options to provide access at at an American Job Center for adult basic education providers. You can provide access through the physical presence of a staff member. For those of you that are co-located, that should be easy enough to do. Or you can provide physical presence of partner staff member appropriately trained to provide information. And that there's some flexibility around what does appropriately trained mean, but that's one of the other options for access. And then the third one is using direct linkage through technology to a program staff who can provide meaningful information or services. We cannot, workforce centers can no longer hand out phone numbers or pamphlets or memos. They have to have a direct linkage through technology, and that could be Skype or that could be a telephone call to an actual person.
So that could mean, Julie, like, so if they, so if an ABE program works with their one-stop center, their workforce center or their American Job Center, they could have a direct linkage where they would be, the ABE intake person could be available via the phone to set up an appointment with someone that shows up at the one-stop or at the workforce center, and they could make that appointment right there at the one, while that person is at the American Job Center.
Yes, that's the whole point, yep. Facilitating those kind of referrals. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. Yeah. Okay. Now we'll move on to the two key logistical agreements that are needed, the Memorandum of Understanding and an Infrastructure Funding Agreement. So the purpose of the MOU is a product of local discussion and negotiation to ensure successful integration and implementation of partner programs. And I know that is the purpose. However, these were due, or they were supposed to be signed by July 1st of this month, and I think there was one workforce development area that actually did have them signed by July 1st of this year. So you might feel like there's a rush to get these signed because we're past the deadline, but I just want to assure you that you can take your time in reviewing the MOU, you can, if you want to pull your ABE partners together and your workforce partners together, you can still do that, and that you should not feel this rush to sign everything off until you're comfortable signing off on the MOU. The other piece is that you're supposed to establish the roles and responsibilities as a local workforce development board, chief elected officials, and one-stop partners. So that would be ABE. And then all required partners must be included in the MOU. So adult basic education as Title II has to be included in the MOU.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that every ABE program has to be signing off on that MOU, correct?
Yep. No, and we'll go into that a little bit further. It needs to be the fiscal agents of the consortia represented in that workforce development area.
Okay.
So that's the MOU. The second piece is the infrastructure funding agreement, and this is causing some confusion, I think, to the ABE field. And it's a little confusing even coming from DEED. So the MOUs were due to be signed July 1st, but there was an extension given for the infrastructure funding agreement. That funding agreement is not due until January 1st. It is a mandatory component of the MOU, and the most important piece for ABE providers to remember is the third bullet here. It says, describes a reasonable cost allocation methodology. So that's what you would want to look at and review before signing the infrastructure agreement. And these are the requirements for the contribution. It needs to be based on proportionate use and relative benefit. So if you are in a workforce center, you should be paying for the space in the workforce center unless you have worked it out with your other partners that they are doing an exchange, some sort of agreement, or oftentimes if it's such a little amount of funding, they won't include it in the infrastructure agreement cost. And then this is the piece about who actually needs to be signing these agreements. These agreements need to be signed by the ABE consortium fiscal agents. Again, this is just a reminder of the key dates. They need to be in place by January 1st. And that's basically it. I'm not going to read through all the bullets there.
Like you say, Julie, this is not something that you want to just wait till December to deal with. These are negotiations that should be starting to happen
in place now. Yeah. You should be, do not. And you can you can push a little bit on this to make sure these conversations are happening now instead of December.
Yep. And ultimately, this funding, the funding that will be used for the infrastructure agreement would be categorized eventually when we get to the reporting as federal flow-through.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, not flow-through, I'm sorry, administrative costs.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if Karen Walters is available. If we could unmute you, Karen, and you could share with people that are on the web chat the process that you had gone through and where you're at in regards to the MOU and infrastructure agreement.
Okay, Karen, I'm going to unmute you right now. Okay, you're unmuted, Karen.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, Julie just asked me to share a little bit about what has happened in South Central Minnesota. And we have a kind of a unique situation where our local workforce council only consists of 2 people, an executive director and an assistant director, and all services here are contracted out to all of the agencies in town. So I am the local representative for ABE on that workforce board, and we all work very collaboratively and have a philosophy of not duplicating services. So our local workforce executive director takes the role of convener for all of our required and optional partners in our area. We have 3 ABE consortia in our area. That would be Faribault County, which is coordinated by Sue Vogelsang, the Area Adult Learning Cooperative, which is coordinated by Becky Hawkins, and then Mankato Area ABE, which is coordinated by me. So we take turns serving on that board and have a lot of involvement, and all of us are involved in the subcommittees of the board. So when this MOU change with WIOA came forward, you know, we already had a strong MOU from the past that actually everybody, you know, signed, knew what it was, actually followed it. It wasn't just a document you get filed and never look at again. We actually had a very live MOU that we used for years. We also have a separate MOU for our career pathway programming, and I chair that committee. So I think for us, the whole situation went fairly smooth. Diane, the executive director for the Workforce Council, told the board and a lot of the subcommittees what needed to happen to create an MOU. We took our old MOU, we looked at the differences, updated it. She drafted a document for us to look at the workforce board meetings. We looked at it, gave feedback. In that MOU, we have all of our required partners listed, definitions of terms, the description of our workforce system, the terms of the agreement, all of our responsibilities, our programs, activities, and services offered by every different agency, who is the one-stop operator, and that went out by RFP to be determined by that for that, how we share funding, our amendments, anything that logistical things we needed to deal with. So she brought that to the board. The board looked at it and gave suggestions and then brought it back to another board meeting, and we all approved that. Then once it's approved by the board, she ran around and got all the signatures from all the required partners and got it. I believe she did get that submitted by July 1st.
Yes, she did.
She came to our regional transitions meeting to get the signatures. We meet quarterly as a regional team, all the ABE managers, and our RTC facilitates those meetings. And so she just came to one of our RTC meetings and got all the signatures at one time. So it went very smooth for us. I did ask questions about that infrastructure funding agreement because I have been hearing from across the state, you know, from Julie and other people at meetings and from other, you know, ABE managers, kind of questions about how people are going to be contributing to infrastructure costs and concerns that people have about that. So I brought that to Diane and I said, you know, we need to know as ABE managers what you're thinking because we haven't really talked about that yet. And she said that, you know, we have a strong practice in place at our local one-stops where the agencies that are housed in the one-stops already split those infrastructure costs according to the space and time that they occupy the spaces. And that will continue. We also have a strong referral system set up for all the required and optional partners. And we'll continue that practice. And she said when we get to the point of completing that infrastructure funding agreement, we will sit down and figure out all of the in-kind funding that's happening and document that. Because she said, I really don't feel like we officially have that documented well, and we'll do that, but don't worry about paying for things if you're not going to be in the Workforce Center. So I feel confident that we'll come up with something that's fair. And as I was listening to what you just said, Julie, about the ways that we can provide access, I really think that would be a good idea for us to ramp that up a little bit, because right now that referral system happens with handing out phone numbers like you talked about, Brad. But I think the actual direct link, the phone call or the Skype call, would be something I'd be way more comfortable with. And our local one-stop director here, Reggie Worlds, and I have talked multiple times about how we can tighten that up, because when you hand a paper to someone with a phone number, it's just not going to happen. It doesn't always happen. Going either way, between ABE to the Workforce Center or Workforce Center to ABE, I feel like there needs to be that tighter handoff of a phone call or an appointment right on the spot. And so I'm really excited to hear about how, or figure out how we can make sure that that's implemented here. So I do have a sample of our MOU. I gave it to Julie via email, and it isn't the draft, it's the final, but it just doesn't have the signatures on it because it's the one we had approved at the last board meeting. So if anybody wants to see it, we can certainly let them look at it. You can email it to them, Julie, or I can.
Okay, thank you for that, Karen. That's very helpful. I just wanted to make people aware too that there's 3 other resources that are listed on this resource page, and one of the reasons I invited or asked Karen if she could speak is because you should look at your other managers as resources and see what they've been doing or how they handled some of the issues that they have come up with. But also attached is the federal MOU PowerPoint slides that were provided to us at a national conference. They're very detailed, and some of the information doesn't pertain to us. I tried to pull out what the most important pieces and put it in the web chat, but it's available if people would like to look at it. The other one is the Minnesota MOU draft document that came from GED. They provided this as a template for workforce development areas to use if they had not had one developed already. So you may want to look at that as well. And finally, there is a TEGL, which is a training and employment guidance letter that comes from the Department of Labor, and it defines what career services are. So all title providers do provide career services. You might want to read that document to see what their interpretation of career services entails. What I've seen is a lot of that relates to the assessments that adult basic education gives. So again, thank you, Karen. And should we
open it up for some questions about, especially about the MOUs or infrastructure agreement?
Yes.
So if you have any questions right now, please raise your hand, or you can type in your questions into the chat function. To raise your hand, just click on the little hand on the little left sidebar of that control panel. And again, thank you so much, Karen, for sharing that process. It's really good to hear how collaboratively it went in one of our regions, in one of our workforce development areas, at least.
Yeah.
Hey, so anyone have a question, you can raise your hand or chat your question into the Meg.
You want to know if I can post the MOU? Yeah, I'll say I've received about 3 of them so far, and I know that eventually they all have to be posted. Karen, I'd go back to you if you think Diane would feel okay if we posted it, or would she prefer if we emailed it individually?
Wait, I'm going to unmute Karen just 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuting. Oh, she responded.
Okay, she'll quick email.
That she can quick email.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if we actually have the ability to post in the middle of a webinar, and I don't know if we do.
But either way, I will definitely send it to you, Meg. And I know what you could. I could add it to this afterwards, though, right? So it would be available to people or not.
We'd have to do it before we end the session, otherwise it won't go out in the after email.
Okay, I could do that, though. I can try if it's okay. All right.
So we have a hand up, and then we have another couple of chat questions. I'm going to first open it up to Kelly McGowan. Kelly, I'm unmuting you.
Hi.
Kelly, you're unmuted. Hey, Kelly.
How are ya?
Good.
Okay, so here's my question. For the recompete, we drafted an MOU with our local Workforce Center, and I got the signatures of Eric and Ron White. Now, do I have to redo an MOU, or is that sufficient?
Kelly, I am guessing, I'm not positive, I'm guessing that you created that MOU as a requirement for the AFLA, because wasn't that one of the items requested, is that you had to provide the MOU?
Right.
You didn't necessarily have to provide the MOU, but there was a question about your collaboration with
Work Center. Okay.
So some folks like Metro South, they actually included a sample of an updated MOU.
Okay. So you do not, that is not you need to go enter into another MOU, and I believe you are in the Hennepin Workforce Development area with Ron White.
Yes.
And so that is the MOU as a consortium manager that you need to be signing off on that particular one. And I have heard from Teresa, who's the rep, and I know they're a little delayed in getting that one out.
And Kelly, the reason for that is we're really hoping to have one umbrella MOU for that entire workforce development area that includes the one-stop operator, ABE as a whole with all the ABE consortia represented, and the other title partners. And it's meant to be one umbrella MOU for everybody.
Well, I think you're giving me extra work, Brad.
However, what I would encourage is you could definitely use the MOU that you developed or share that with Teresa and your other ABE colleagues as kind of a starting or jumping off point, or at least a resource to use for this MOU development.
Yeah. For instance, in the draft MOU that was created by DEED, which I'm guessing Ron might be using that one, you have to list all these services that you provide, and Todd had suggested that it might be a good idea that you list them according to the areas and the sites that you serve. Like, this is what we provide, in South Metro ABE, and then Robbinsdale and Osseo might want to put in the services that they provide. So that those would all be included in the umbrella MOU.
Yep.
Okay, so when we get together for a regional meeting or a transitions meeting, we can work through this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be a perfect time to do it.
And I would definitely share that draft, that MOU you submitted with the federal application as kind of background for feeder for this process.
Yeah, they all have it. I've shared it with my region. But, okay, so we are only going to be working on one MOU, correct?
Yep, one umbrella MOU that represents all the ABE programs and all the other WIOA title partners and other partners that might be included.
Mm-hmm.
And it is due again January?
It was due July 1. But we all acknowledge that it was a little bit of, I'm going to speak for myself here, and somewhat unofficially. It was a very tight timeline, and potentially I would go so far as to say somewhat unrealistic to say that all of our ABE providers could go through the federal competitive application, not get notified till May, as well as our one-stop operators were going through an entire competitive process, and that has just been going at this point right now. To do all of that simultaneously and still also have a comprehensive MOU that represents all the WIOA partners by July 1, to me that seemed like in my personal opinion, seemed like a bit of a stretch to get all that done right away. So kudos to folks like South Central that got that in right away. And I know I see Pat Thomas said that Southwest ABE and that Southwest area did get their MOU finished, and they also had a great collaborative spirit through that process, so that is great to hear. And so I say kudos to all of you for getting that, but it was a tall order to try to get all of that done by July 1, and we are not at all holding it against programs that they're still working through this process, because we'd rather see a good MOU than a rushed and somewhat non-descriptive MOU.
Yes, these MOUs will be in place for 3 years. So as I said, take your time making sure you're comfortable with what's in them and signing off on them.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm going to go cry. Okay, bye.
Yeah, I'm going to mute you again, Kelly.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to go to we have some chat questions. Oops, I lost how to mute Kelly here.
Can
you start with Deb McDermott Johnson?
Yep, so Deb McDermott Johnson asks,
all right,
if we have not had contact from our workforce partners, would it be advised that our ABE consortium initiate the conversation?
Absolutely, Deb. In fact, I've always thought, or what I've begun to observe, is that a lot of times the adult basic education providers have a little more, insight into this process, and I was trying to figure out why some of our partners don't seem as up to speed on this. But then when we attended the national conference, our adult ed colleagues basically said the same thing. They're more or less leading the process around the different states as well. So you should feel free to approach your workforce center and just ask about that. And I'm trying to figure out what Owatonna is that WDI Rochester, I think. Yeah. Either way, though, yes, you should feel free to approach them.
And then we have another question from Sarah Hoggard, and this is a good question for any program that submitted their federal application as a statewide organization or as a special population. So she says, as a statewide and disability-focused consortium, would it be acceptable for us to just do an MOU with Voc Rehab, or should they also have one with our local workforce center? And so, well, Julie, do you want to start that?
Yeah, so I would definitely say do not just do one with Voc Rehab. I think you need to be in the umbrella MOU, and when you describe your services that you are providing, I would highlight the services that you are working on with Voc Rehab, because that's definitely one of the areas you excel in.
So that means, Sarah, that you should think about your physical location and anyone that's designated themselves as a statewide or special population, which we had Department of Corrections is a little funny, but that also would include IEC and American Indian OIC and ThinkSelf. Those three organizations in particular should really think about their actual primary physical locations where they're offering services and be a part of the MOU with where that physical location where the physical locations, if there are multiple, those MOUs for those WDAs or workforce development areas. Let's see how many acronyms I can get in one sentence.
That was a lot.
So so that's a great question, Sarah. And then Karen's noting that their MOU is good through June 30th, 2020, because that is a 3-year MOU. And then Tracy asked the question, did you say there's a template example to follow for what goes in an I'm assuming she means MOU, not the Mall of America. But just quick typo. And then where exactly is that? So that, Tracy, is in the materials.
Mm-hmm.
If you look under the materials, there's both federal guidance, but there's actually a document from DEED that's kind of an MOU template.
Yes.
And you'll want to look at both of those.
And I'd be more than willing to send you some of the, if it's approved, I'll be more than willing to send you some examples of what's been happening around the state with ones they have put together.
And I should also note that we heard from the feds that, you know, some folks might feel a little rushed as to getting through it, and they may say, well, we did a pretty good job, but maybe we could have articulated it a little bit better. The feds will expect better MOUs the next time around than the first time around. They were pretty explicit about that, and they will actually, when they come and do monitoring, whether it's Department of Labor or the Federal Department of Education, they will be coming out and reading those comprehensive MOUs.
Yeah.
Pat Adams has another question.
Okay.
A couple questions. Is this MOU in addition to a current MOU that has been in place with the local Workforce Center? And how do I determine if our contribution to the infrastructure of services is already embedded in the current MOU? And if it is embedded, do I need to facilitate a separate IFA or infrastructure agreement?
So let's start with that MOU question. Just the MOU.
The MOU should be a new one that went into effect July 1st, 2017, and goes through 2020. And Pat, I believe your area did do that. So I think that is your MOU. Just check the dates. I should know, but I think, yeah. And then in terms of what was the second?
The infrastructure agreement is, how do I determine if our contribution to the infrastructure of services is already embedded in that current MOU? And if it is embedded, does there need to be a separate IFA?
I would ask Nicole Swanson that question, is if they're planning on working on an IFA agreement. I think your situation is similar to what Karen was describing, where in Minnesota, a lot of programs have already had this practice going on of how they divide up the costs. And for many of them, it's more of a hassle to work something out with ABE, so they're just not doing that. But I would definitely talk to the Workforce Center manager and clarify that, so you know that going forward. Does that answer your, I hope, does that answer your question or not?
Pat says that helps.
Okay.
They're in discussion.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Final call for any questions on infrastructure agreements and MOUs. Who knew this could be such a lively and engaging conversation?
Such a fun topic.
FYI, Julie and I were just at the state directors meeting, the National State Directors Meeting for Adult Education. We spent an entire day on this topic.
Oh, yeah.
It was a fun first day to the conference. Okay, Tom asked the question, since the final agreement with the feds on cost sharing for the infrastructure agreement is not due until the end of December, will the Workforce Center expect to come back and renegotiate costs with us? Potentially, because they might need to have a more explicit infrastructure funding agreement in place. So it might be a renegotiation of costs or maybe a more clear articulation of costs.
Yeah, that's similar to Pat's question too, where I would say when you're signing these MOUs, I would make sure you're being explicit about, like, are they planning on adding an infrastructure agreement to this MOU by January? If they say no, that's fine. If they say, well, yes, we're going to do that, then I would push them to do that as soon as possible. All right.
Okay. Well, let's move on then. So thanks everyone. Great questions from folks. I'm glad to hear some of the positive news and some of the great questions coming from all of you. And now let's talk about some other transitions updates. So I'm going to turn it right back to you, Julie.
Okay, and I'm going to go through these relatively quickly. If you have questions, just throw them out there. KeyTrain will no longer be in the contract through deed. It was Wagner Pizer that was supporting the purchase of KeyTrain through Workhorse Centers and Adult Basic Education. So that is ending. So if you have lost access to those accounts, that's why. If you use it a lot and you want to continue using it, you can establish your own contract with, I believe it's ACT, yeah. However, they are no longer calling it KeyTrain, and they've revised a lot of the content to align closer to the work keys assessments, and those assessments have also been revised. All right. Then transitions regional plans. I'm hoping to have the template sent out to all the ABE fiscal agents and current regional transition coordinators early next week. It will be due September 29th. And just to know, there will be, I'm trying to align that closer to some of the WIOA regulations and to your local workforce development plans from your local area. So an example of this, well, if you could show, this is what the first page is going to look like, where we're hoping that you'll identify the American Job Centers in your workforce development area, your key industries in the regional economy, your Perkins Consortia, et cetera, et cetera. So that, just to give you a heads up on that. And any questions on those? If not, go ahead, Brad. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, we go from one exciting topic to another. We went from infrastructure agreements and MOUs to accountability and data.
Yeah, and I like how you left, you left my name on there, and I have nothing to do with accountability and data.
Well, Julie, I thought you'd tackle this for me. I thought I put together the slides.
No, I'm the one sleeping on the computer.
Jenny wants to remind us that data is fun.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny. So this is a reminder. This should not be news to anybody. We've announced this before, and there is an email going out soon about this, again, just as a reminder. But all of your July to June data, so July 2016 to June 2017, June 30th, 2017, all that local ABE program data needs to be entered into the ABE database, into SID, and completed by July 1st, 2017. And by the end of the day, Friday, August 4th, we need you to email to Sherry 2 items. 1, your level gains with post-test rates report, and your student history goals report that shows local and standard diploma counts. Those 2 reports need to be in Microsoft Excel format. So those are the 2 pieces that we need from you by the end of the day, Friday, August 4th. We've publicized this before, and we're just publicizing it yet again. Some of the data to make sure that you have entered and completed are all your new students entered, are all your tests entered, pre and post test, are all your contact hours entered, are all your diplomas earned entered. And that could be local diplomas issued from your local school district and or standard adult high school diplomas that your students have earned. And are all your NRS, any other traditional NRS required information, is that also entered? So please make sure you're looking through all of that at this point. I'm going to do a quick check of the chat and with Jenny. Jenny, have I labeled those reports correctly here on the slide? I just want to make sure that I have all those correct. I just unmuted you, but I noticed that you're self-muted, so you need to unmute yourself. Okay. She says, yep, that's what they're called. We got it correct. Thank you, Jenny. So please make sure you do Excel submissions of the level gains with post-test rates report and the student history goals report. That includes your local and standard diploma counts. Jenny, do you have any? Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't think I have anything to add to that particular point. Those are the names of the 2 reports. If people were at the May trainings, we talked about both of them. And if people have questions, they know how to find us.
Yep.
And we've got some help documents on our help page and stuff, so these shouldn't be a problem.
Perfect. Yep. Thanks for that additional reminder that was also covered in the SID training, the database training that you guys led this spring. So thank you, Jenny, and thank you also, Mary. I know Mary's on the line as well.
Yep.
Great. Okay, Jenny, I muted you again. Okay. In addition to that data reporting, we will be producing a report card. This is another reminder, and that will include level completions, diploma rates, post-secondary entry, and employment outcomes. And so we will be publishing that sometime in this fall once we conduct our data matching with SID and our other partner databases. And we're reporting all of our data in October, and so it will after be that October submission that we send this to you. Just also to note, even though we are producing a report card, it's very important. We want to make sure that you know that there's not a program improvement process based on this report card, but you'll be able to see how multiple programs and consortia performed, but there will not be any set program improvement benchmarks with this report card. Another piece that you might have noticed come out through COABE recently is regarding serving individuals that do not provide Social Security numbers. The federal government has made it very clear that WIOA programs, all title programs, cannot deny services for individuals that refuse to give Social Security numbers, according to the federal government with their WIOA regulations. The federal government has outlined some options, and that was what you saw in the COABE email, that they had these alternative methods for collecting information such as like wage verification and things like that for those individuals that do not provide Social Security numbers. We are analyzing these alternative methods and everything and looking at what the feds are requiring versus what is optional. And we're going to be providing more information to you and discussing this further when we do our fall 2017 accountability training sessions. And those are coming up. There's a couple different options for fall accountability for our fall 2017 accountability sessions. That will include the Social Security number issue, but it'll also include more information on all the new WIOA accountability measures that are being implemented. And so those, some of the places that you'll be able to catch trainings for this will include the Support Services Conference, which is November 30th and December 1st of this year. We also will be hosting a special webinar for administrators. The date is TBD. And we will be having a state ABE session at regionals. So you'll be able to and we'll have some of that information there. So those are the 3 main ways that we'll be getting some of this information out to you. Likely there will be some emails and some other ways that we'll be getting training information to you. So that won't be the only ways, but these will be the 3 primary ways in the next, or this fall, that you'll be able to get this information. And last but not least, in terms of accountability, I just want to say that our prediction was correct. We still do not have any negotiated performance targets for the year that started July 1. So all we can say on that is stay tuned. We do know that the feds are hosting some special accountability or NRS trainings this fall, and we're starting to wonder if they're going to wait till after those trainings before we actually have any negotiated targets. But we don't know. We have not heard any inkling of the start of negotiations from our federal liaisons yet. So at this point, I'd like to turn it back over to the chat function, or for you to raise your hand to see if there are any questions that folks have. Any questions about any of the accountability, the data that's due in the database by the end of July, or that you need to submit to us by August 4, or the report card or anything else that you might have. Well, I thank you, Julie, for exhausting all of their questions by the time we got to this section. Okay, well, at this point, we're going to move on then. And if you have additional questions that come up, we can answer it at the end of the session. But let's go on to our next topic, grants. Julie, this is you again. I think I just put you on every topic.
Okay, all right. I'd like to congratulate the following grantees who received Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education grants. Originally, we were looking at 7 grants. We were expecting them to be around $100,000 each. Some came in lower, so we were able to add a few more grants to that process. And then the next is Pathways to Prosperity. They did get legislation through that funded Pathways to Prosperity for the next 2 years. I think it's about $6 million per year. And the timeline below, so they are going to try to get a request for proposal out between July and early August. So please be aware of that. That's when they're hoping they'll give probably 6 weeks for you to write your proposals. It wouldn't be a bad idea if you've written for them in the past to start gathering your partners and maybe outline some ideas about what you might propose. And the detailed information is on this slide. And obviously, when I get more information from DEED, I send it out as quickly as I receive it. And that's it for grants. If anyone has any questions.
We did get one question.
Okay, right.
One of our participants, Meg, wanted to see the IEL Civics grantees again. So we had Anoka Hennepin, or Metro North, Metro South, Bloomington, Hopkins, Mankato, or which is Adult Options and Education. Yeah. Mankato area, Minnesota Literacy Council, Neighborhood House, Robbinsdale, St. Paul Public Schools, and South Think.
Oh,
or Think South.
Think, oh, okay.
No, Think South Inc.
Okay.
Which used to be Communication Services for the Deaf, or a Deaf ABE program. It was pretty competitive, though. We had how many applications total?
24 total.
24, yeah. So we could only fund about a third of the applications submitted. Yeah, very competitive. Okay. Here, finally, Julie, you don't have to talk on this one. So I'd like to give you a little bit of an update on our high school equivalency assessment. Meg, yes, that's correct. Think Self is Deaf ABE. Yep. That is their new organization name. So a couple of quick things I want folks to know. The legislature has approved GED Testing Subsidy, and we did have to make a quick alteration to it in order to better adhere to the statute. GED Testing Service was able to implement an alternate method. GED testers that want to utilize the $10 subsidy need to use the code MNGED10 in order to access that $10 discount. And that $10 discount applies only to the first test in each subject for the GED. And that started July 5th. That was up and running. The legislature allocated $125,000, and that was to partially subsidize testing. And they were very articulate that that was clear that this was to partially subsidize testing for the tester. And that test will be, like I said before, the first $10 in the first GED test in each subject, so a total of $40 per tester in a complete battery. And this will apply to any tester that not only uses that code, but they select Minnesota as the location they will test, even if they're on a border state, or even if they are a lot close to the border and end up testing in North Dakota or South Dakota, they should still select Minnesota as the location they will test. They should schedule testing at any non-corrections testing center in Minnesota or any approved test center in one of those border communities. And we've already uploaded those into the deal, as well as use that MN GED 10 code. So that is how that testing subsidy can be used. This has gone out in an email, so I hope that you are sharing this far and wide with your potential testers, and we are getting it on the MDE website as well. And it is also already in the GED.com information. The other piece of legislation that came out of this session was that the term GED has been wiped out of state statute and replaced with state education something that insinuates state education commissioner approved high school equivalency assessment or assessments. And so there's a lot of detail lacking yet in terms of how this is going to go forward. Currently, we are working with other folks, the commissioner and other folks at the Department of Ed and Minnesota Management and Budget to figure out what does this imply in terms of what is required according to state law now that there's a more generic term that's being used. For example, we need to know what are the procurement processes that need to be adhered to and what are all the pieces there in terms of do we need to call up for an RFP or everything that way. So there's a lot of questions that MNB, MDE are not yet clear on how that goes forward or who has the authority to help that go forward. But it does, the statute also calls for AD stakeholder inclusion, and so we have a proposal going forward that we're drafting across the agencies to figure out how that will look. The timeline is yet to be determined, but it is potential that this could be a 1 to 2 year process. So look for additional updates at Summer Institute and throughout this fall. So that is everything in terms of high school assessments, high school equivalency assessments. Here are our upcoming web chats that are coming up. Our next one is Wednesday, September 20th, and then we have one in January and another one in May, and they're all scheduled from 1 to 2:30. So at this point, I do want to thank you and we hope you have a great month, and we'll see you at Summer Institute. But let's dive into some of your additional questions that folks have about any of the topics that we've discussed today or any other topics. Linda Keller initially had asked whether that report card that I had talked about includes a consortium level breakdown of employment outcomes and post-secondary outcomes. I had told her that yes, that does include the consortium level outcomes for post-secondary and for employment, unless that cohort is so small that we can't actually report it without violating private data privacy. So smaller programs might not get consortium level data.
Could you go back a slide, Brad, just for the dates on the web chat?
Yeah. Linda Keller also asked, is there any additional funding to provide more free GED ready voucher codes as there has been in the past? We do not have any new codes that we have purchased at this time, but we still have about a couple hundred, and I have a couple of requests in for folks that have requested some. So there might be a couple left, not a ton. So Linda, if your consortium wants a couple of them, I've just updated, I'm in the process of updating those codes. But there are a couple other consortia that are ahead in line before as I get those updated codes that I can send out. So Linda, if you would like some, you can just email me with the number that how many you would like, and I can see how many I can give you. And then Deb McDermott Johnson had another question on MOUs. So Southeast ABE is served by 2 workforce development areas or organizations. And so she's asking if they need an MOU from each, even though one organization only serves one of the consortium program sites.
Yes, you would. If there is programming, that's the guideline we're using. If you have programming in any of those areas, you should be part of the MOU.
Yeah. So basically, it's not that this is like the ABE program MOU. Think of it as that workforce development areas MOU, and you need to sign off on each area MOU that you're a part of.
Yep. and I'm guessing you're referring, maybe I'm wrong on this, are you thinking of Winona?
Yeah, Winona would be the other one, Winona County.
Yeah, they should definitely have, yes, you would have to sign there because Chris does have a program down in Winona.
Yeah, she is talking
Yeah,
about.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions folks have for us? I'm just taking a moment to enjoy the silence.
I just want to say I realize the MOUs and IFAs are new. It's confusing, and there's a lot of balls that are still up in the air that we're trying to juggle. So please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and I will do my best to provide you with any support and information that I can pull together and get back to you on.
And as confusing as it's been for you, some of the guidance has been a little unclear to us as well. And we've been trying to figure this out and been a little confused along the way as well.
Yeah.
In fact, when Julie and I were at the state directors meeting, we were kind of getting some guidance that we had not heard yet before, and yet it was 3 days before the MOUs were technically due. Well, thank you to everyone. I think we can stop the recording now, Carla.